And like I said, that ultra mindset of push, 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 I had pushed it so far that I was at my breaking point and I wanted my life back because the pain is terrible. But for me, not being able to do the things that I normally did, I went from being able to run 31 miles to not being able to walk 10 minutes. That bothered me more, almost, I would say, than the pain, was having your life stripped from you. And, knowing that life is short and this is 5 months of my life that it's just been ruined, basically. I tried to enjoy things, but it was always there. It was like waking up in a messed up Groundhog Day.
Welcome to Bed, Back, and Beyond, sharing positive stories of recovery from serious back or neck injury. Your host is CK, a fellow champion who draws on her own experience with herniated disc surgery. Join her as she talks with others who have overcome the physical and emotional trauma of a painful injury, and discover for yourself how you can find hope and encouragement in recovery.
Hi, Loretta. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Bed, Back, and Beyond. Before we jump into your injury, how about you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, well, thank you for having me. I'm happy to share my story because if it can help anyone or give anyone hope, I know that you need it when you have a herniated disc or anything going on with your back. So my name is Loretta, and I am a mother and a wife. And the thing that I like to do is run. I enjoy running so much. I started running in my 30s. I was never athletic. I was never into sports in school. I always worked. And so that was kind of my thing. Since I was 16 years old, I had a full-time job. And I had my son at 30. And I was home, and it was like, I need something to do, something for me. And so my sister-in-law invited me to do a run. It was called the Dixie 200. It was a relay run with 12 other people. And you had legs of the race. And I had like 3 legs. And they were anywhere from, I think, 7 to 8 miles long each. And we ran 200 miles with the 12 of us from Georgia to Birmingham, Alabama. And so I was hooked. I was like, this is my thing. This is
You
what
fell
I
in
like.
love with running.
Yes, this is what I like to do. This is what I can do with my extra time that I have now. This is I'm staying at home with my son. And I just fell in love. And then I just kept pushing. It was like, okay, I did that. What else could I do? And I ran 5Ks and then 10Ks. And then I did half marathons. I did a bunch of half marathons. And then I did probably 5 or 6 marathons. And in February of 2023, I ran my first ultra, 31 miles without stopping, 5,000 feet of elevation gain. So it was like a brutal course, but I wanted a big challenge, and I got it.
Well, that is one. Jeez.
Yeah, and so I strained my hip flexor in that race, and I was letting it recover, and I thought, well, I'll cut back. I was like, I'll do my fastest 5K. I'll try to get a 5K in 30 minutes. And so while I was doing this 5K, at the end of it, it was the end of May, started to feel like my hamstrings were tight. And I thought, So plan was we need to stretch. Because I'll be honest, I was not real good about stretching. It was just not fun to do. I was more get into the activity, and so I was like, well, I'll stretch this out. It'll be fine. And so I did all this stretching, and I did my fastest 5K. I got done with that. Me and my husband decided to start running together because he also runs, and he's an Ironman and a power lifter, and he even got me to do a powerlifting meet. I did a powerlifting meet in my 30s. And
oh, wow.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. The only reason I did it is
next for you.
Yeah. Well, to get completely normal would be nice, but I don't know if that's a thing.
You will.
With the nerve pain. For you, how is your nerve pain now?
It's rarely there. Every once in a while, So my surgery was 2019. Every once in a while, I'll have a flare. And usually, if I do something that makes my back tighten up, like if I overdo something, and I'll have a flare for a day, and I'll use a heating pad, and I'll take some Advil, and then it's gone the next day. But
Oh,
it's infrequent.
right. Oh, that's
Yeah.
awesome. I've noticed that too. I had 2 really good weeks in a
Mhm.
row, and I am back to, I walk now a little over 3 miles a day, and I work
Mhm.
out anywhere from an hour and a half a day. So I was feeling a little greedy, I guess, and I was like, well, let's just push this. How about some yard work with a shovel? And um, big mistake. It's because back got tight. Was tight for about 3 days, and then here come the nerve pain. So, but
I'm hoping to get back into weightlifting. I was into weightlifting years and years ago. It's not what hurt my back, but we have had a couple moves and I just fell out of it. So we just got a barbell, we've got a bench, so I'm excited to get back into weightlifting. I got to get past that fear of
yes,
not
the
weightlifting.
fear is real. Are you now? Do you like to like bodybuild or more powerlifting? Do you like to kind of see how much you can lift?
I guess it would be more about bodybuilding. I want that muscular definition. I miss it. I lost it once we got into all the moves and things. And so
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
my next plan. I do my cardio, my dancing or my kickboxing cardio,
Uh huh.
with no pain problem whatsoever. But I want to get back into weightlifting.
Yes, it's so much fun, and that's what I'm doing a lot of right now. It's just a bodybuilding style because I want to get some strength because I feel like that may be where I messed up with the long distance running was I was just focusing on that really, and every now and then I would do core, or every now and then I would fit in a workout, and I think I just created weaknesses in my. I've always had to fight using my back when I lift or do anything because it's the part of me, like my hips and glutes, have always been an issue with being weak. Like when I was powerlifting, I had trouble locking out a heavy, heavy deadlift because I couldn't get my hips through. And I had to be very careful about deadlifting because my form wanted to break, because the back wanted to take over and do all the work. Going back to what I was saying, when me and my husband started running together, and I had been doing all the stretching, I woke up one morning and I had this weird electrical, like my leg is asleep, my glute is tight, my hamstring is tight. Like, what is this feeling? Like, because I had no clue. I've never been injured like that. I've had little injuries that I've worked out on my own. I never did PT or anything for anything. And, usually I just give stuff a break. Instead of running, you ride the bike for a while, the stationary bike at home, let things heal, they go away. I'd been fortunate. And so I told my husband, I noticed that when we would get up in the morning and run, I would have to stretch and get loose a little bit because everything was tight, and I had that weird feeling. Well, when we would run, that feeling would go away, and it would feel better. And I'm like, okay, well, running's not a hindrance. If it helps, keep running. And so I was looking up online and I saw piriformis syndrome,
Yep.
and yeah, it's common in runners. So I
Yeah.
thought,
Okay.
there you go. And the weird feeling down the leg because it can tighten and it can bother the sciatic nerve. And I Google doced it right up. I knew what I had.
Mhm.
I had piriformis syndrome.
I did the
And
same thing.
did you really?
Yep.
And so I kept running, but it was still there. And I had read this article about nerve pain and about how if you didn't get it treated, it could be permanent. That you could really mess yourself up, and that scared me. I was like, oh, okay, this is not going away. Something's clearly wrong. What's my next step? And me and my husband talked, and my husband had used a chiropractor. He had 2 bulging discs. My husband was a 4 times state champion powerlifter, times in APF and 2 times in SPF. So he was way better at it than I was. I just enjoyed it. And so he had bulged 2 discs in his back. And he went to a chiropractor. It worked for him. He got better. And he did.
Okay.
he rest and, let it heal and did the chiropractor, and it worked for him. So I was thinking, if it is piriformis and it's doing something with the sciatic nerve, maybe he can help me. And so I didn't go to the same chiropractor my husband went to because we had moved from where we were living when he went. And so I went to the chiropractor and we had a consultation, and he said, he listened to what I had to say, and he said, I think I can help you. And he took me back and he did he had me bend over. And at that time I could bend over and I didn't really feel any pain. He had me bend over and do all this stuff, and he had me bend back, and bending back didn't trigger anything. And he had me stand in front of this chart and had me turn every direction to look at how I stand and all that stuff. Then he took x-rays, and he called me back in the next day, and he went over with me what our plan would be, that he wanted to see me for so many visits, and it was going to cost so much every time I went. And it was I want to say it was like a 6-month plan of visits. And starting out, it was 3 times a week, and then it would go to 2 times a week, and then you would get to 1 time a week. And he showed me my x-ray, and he said, I'm surprised that you haven't had problems before this. What's wrong and probably what's causing your pain is your hips are out of alignment. And he said, so your hips are like this. And he said, when I get finished adjusting you, you're even going to have one foot that is possibly one leg that's longer than the other. And I remember thinking, what? It's kind of weird.
That's weird, yeah.
But I wanted to be better so bad. It was okay, this is the plan. If he says my hips are out of alignment, they're out of alignment. I went to him for probably 4 adjustments, as he called it. And the pain got worse. And then I got to where I couldn't run. And I remember what day it was. It was July 15th of 2023. Me and my husband went for our run, and we were supposed to run 8 miles that day. We ran 5 miles, and I was like, I'm miserable, and I tap. At this point, the running is hurting, and I'm not gonna keep doing it if it hurts. And my husband tapped with me because he had an issue going on with his knee, and so we both just called it quits that day for a while. And those 4 adjustments, and the chiropractor told me, he said, stretch and walk. I remember me and my husband were walking together then, and we went for a walk one morning, and it was like maybe 15 minutes we had been walking. And I was like, this is just miserable. Like, I can't even walk. Like, I'm trying to do what he says to do, but I literally can't. And so I come home, and I had read about smashing. You ever heard of smashing?
No.
Okay. It's where you take a softball and you dig it into the glute, to the area that hurts. I did that, and I was stretching, and I was trying to get the pain to go away. Well, I had no clue what was going on. All I knew was all of a sudden I couldn't sit down on the ground. I couldn't sit on the couch. Like, every time I would try to sit, my body would literally, like it was locking up, and I would just jerk in pain. Like, couldn't stand it. So I told my husband, I said, I'm going to the urgent care. And so I made an appointment online and went to the urgent care. I drove myself up to the urgent care, and they took an x-ray too. And, of course, they didn't see anything. And so she gave me I think it was a Toradol shot. And she gave me a steroid shot, but not like the steroid shots that you got, I don't think, because you had to be numb for that. I think this was just like the medicine type steroid, like they might give you old or something. And so I got in the car and I come back home, and in about an hour, I felt amazing. But I just crashed. I mean, all I wanted to do was sleep on the couch, because it was like my body was, for the first time in weeks, resting and felt somewhat normal. So I kept going to the chiropractor because I just wanted something to work. And I thought, well, maybe this is helping. Because I will say that, after he would adjust me, it did seem like I would get a little bit of relief sometimes.
Did he have any explanation as to why it was hurting more after?
He actually said, because I had mentioned piriformis to him, and he actually said, well, sometimes when we adjust, we can actually make the piriformis tight when we adjust. And because he hadn't mentioned piriformis, he thought it was uneven hips was causing my problem. And so when I mentioned that to him, he was like, well, sometimes when we adjust, it can. And I was like, well, I was, having this pain before I came to you. And he was like, sometimes this happens. Like, people think it's not working because they're not feeling better right away, but we just got to give it some time. I'm like, okay. Well, when I had went to the urgent care, I asked the doctor, because me and my husband had a trip planned to go to Colorado, and we were driving 22 hours one way. And so she was like, well, the medicine I gave you, because she also gave me, I forgot to say that, she also gave me muscle relaxers and meloxicam 7.5.
Okay.
And told me to take that. And she was like, with the medicine I've given you, you should be fine to go on your trip. She was like, just don't be doing any hikes on any crazy terrain that's like uneven or anything.
And at this point, no one had mentioned it could be a disc.
No,
Okay.
nobody. And now I had told my husband, because I had looked at that, because that kind of comes up when you're looking at piriformis. And I had told my husband, I said, I'm honestly starting to wonder if I have a herniated disc. And he laughed at me. He was like, if you had a herniated disc, you would be laying in the floor screaming your head off crying. I was like, okay, well, maybe he's right. It's, so I just kind of let that go.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to go to Colorado. Our friend Brad was doing the Leadville 200 mountain bike race, which is a big deal out there. And we wanted to go and support him and see Colorado, of course, because it's beautiful. Right. And we had never been. So we had this big trip planned, and we were excited. And I remember being nervous. I was like, I am nervous about this trip because I don't know what is up with this pain. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And I kept pushing through. And I think I kept pushing through because when you do like marathons or ultras, especially when you get into that distance, you're used to pushing. You're used to pushing through discomfort. We took our trip, and I remember we stopped in Arkansas and stayed the night. Then we stopped in Texas and stayed the night. And then we went on into Colorado. And we wouldn't have stopped that many times. We could have probably stayed one night over, but I was so miserable, and I felt like everything was tight, and I was constantly doing the pigeon pose stretch constantly in the car, because that was the only way I could get it to loosen up. And I was thinking that it was helping me, but I don't know if it really was or not.
Yeah.
But I just kept doing it. And so we got to Colorado, and I remember we were out on the course waiting for Brad to come through on his mountain bike at a point that we could see him. And I had one of those cheap folding chairs from Walmart, the really cheap, the saggy bottom, And I kind of got tired of standing on my feet, because you know how a herniated disc does. After you stand for a while, you're like, man, because your back is just tired and killing you. Yeah. And so I just kind of plopped in this chair. And when I did, oh my gosh, it was like it felt like the top of my head exploded off. It was just, and I mean, I come up out of that chair as fast as I sat in it. And I was like, this is just not right. Something is just not right. And while we were at Colorado, I would have to stretch in a chair in the pigeon pose stretch and kind of fall forward just a little at a time until I could get down to kind of over the top of my leg, because it was so tight. And then I would get down in the floor and I would do my piriformis routine, and which was some stretches and some glute bridges and stuff like that. I would do hot baths. I don't know if that helped you, but like getting hot water seemed like it helped.
Mm.
And I know a lot of people are like, ice, ice, ice.
Hmm.
Ice killed me. Cold water,
Really?
yes, it was the worst. I made the mistake of getting in an ice bath
Hmm.
because I thought, maybe this will help, whatever it is. It wrecked my body, just like
Oh,
the day that I broke down and had to go to the urgent care. And I remember I threw my swimsuit on, I went out to the back deck, and I laid in the hot sun to make the pain go away.
wow.
So I could never ice. And everybody else was like, you have to ice, you have to get that inflammation down. But I literally could not stand to do it. So we went through that at Colorado, and on our way home, we stopped. We wanted to get home. We wanted to see our son because he didn't go. He stayed with my brother, and he was in school, and so he stayed here. And we were ready to get home and see my son. And so, when it comes to your kids, you'll suffer a little more. And so, we only stopped in Oklahoma, and so I think that put us staying in the car that first day like 13, 14 hours. And I was taking my muscle relaxers, and I was taking my meloxicam, and I remember we got in our room in Oklahoma, and I was like, I'm going to get in a hot bath. It wasn't scalding hot, but just warm water seemed to help. And I was really hurting then. And the only thing it just had to be all the sitting in
Yeah.
the truck. And
Hmm.
so I was really hurting. And I remember I walked over to the counter in the bathroom to get my towel. And all of a sudden, I felt like somebody took my muscle from my glute to my hamstring and just went, just,
Yeah.
it was like, oh my God, what was that? I mean, I almost hit the floor if I hadn't
Hmm.
have been grab the counter. The next morning, did my stretching routine, got back in the truck, and I told my husband, I said, something is just not right.
Yeah. And what
And
month was this?
this was in August.
August. Okay.
This was around August. We would have been come home. It was around August 14th, probably, because I
Okay.
think, yeah. And I knew Andrew's Sports Medicine here in Birmingham. I don't know if you've ever heard of them, but they are like, they're it here in Alabama. They do surgeries on and help PT people in the WWE, like John Cena and
Okay.
and so they're well known and well
Yeah.
trusted. And so I told my husband on the way home, I was like, something's just not right. This is getting worse. Like, this is bad, and it's not healing.
Hmm.
So I called Andrew's Sports Medicine and made an appointment with Dr. Ketchum. He is a non-surgical doctor. He's in Coleman, which is close to me. I remember talking to his receptionist, and I was telling her, and at this point, I had started having that little bit of like your leg being asleep, like your foot feeling asleep. I remember telling her on the phone what I was doing, and I said, I'm pretty sure that I have piriformis syndrome. And I was telling her what I was doing, and she goes, that kind of sounds like your back. And I remember I was like, okay. And she was like, well, I'll see if Dr. Ketchum will see you. And so he said that he would see me. And when we got home, I can't remember. I think it was the next week I went in to see him. And I told him, that I thought I had piriformis syndrome. He had me lay down on his table, and he pushed where your piriformis is. And I didn't have any reaction to that. And he goes, if you had piriformis when I pushed on that, you would have come up off this table. And I remember he had me move, he had me bend, and at this time, still with the bending and with the leg raise trick, they always do,
Yeah.
nothing.
You weren't positive. Okay.
And so I can understand his confusion at even thinking that, and
Yeah.
so I was kind of thinking that he would do an MRI when I told him how long that it had
Yeah.
been going on. And he diagnosed me with a inflamed nerve root, S1.
Okay.
And so he was like, he gave me steroids to take, like a steroid pack. And he gave me meloxicam 15. And he sent me to PT. I did maybe 2 weeks of PT,
Mm-hmm.
come home, kept doing the chiropractor.
Uh,
Uh, yeah, a glut for punishment, just didn't learn. And so the chiropractor had told me that it was time to reevaluate. And I
mm-hmm.
remember they gave me this form to fill out, and it was like, is your pain any better? And I mean, I was totally honest, no, it's not. Can you tell that it's helped you? No, it hasn't. And he wanted me to come in and do like a reevaluation where he did this stuff all over again. Bend over, bend back. Well, after I'd been home, and I think he had adjusted me twice, and then we did that. And I was doing the PT, and the PT, it seemed to help. I felt good after I left there, but the last time he had adjusted me, that second time, it was weird. I felt like a pop. I felt a pop, and it wasn't like from him adjusting me, and it felt like my spine went like that. It was almost like I could feel something shift and felt it pop, and it got way worse at that point. It was like how I had been when I went to the urgent care all the time. And I called Dr. Ketchum and his office, and I told the lady, I was like, I'm miserable. And this was the end of August, the beginning of September. And she was like, well, one thing we can do is we can try to change your medicine. And I was like, whatever you think. Like, I'm willing to try anything at this point. And so she gave me, I think I'm saying this right, diclofenac. It's like an
No idea.
anti-inflammatory. And so I'm taking this. I go back to this chiropractor, and he wants to reevaluate me. He takes me through all these bending things again. When I bend forward, I literally say, ow.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it hurts so bad. I got to where I couldn't pick my foot up from the brake to the gas pedal without feeling. I got to
Mm-hmm.
where I couldn't reach over to close my door on my car without feeling pain. I
Mm-hmm.
got stuck in the bathtub, like in the bent over position in pain.
Uh,
And I remember the last PT I went to, um, they had me get on the bike, and I was miserable that day. I didn't even want to get in the car and go to PT. And so I was working with a different guy this day. I had been working with a girl, and this day it was a guy, and I had never met him before. And he put me on the bike like they do to warm up, just to take it
mm-hmm.
easy. Well, I went to turn the bike with my feet, and I literally locked up in pain. Like, I literally got stuck in the pain. And I mean, I don't like to cry in front of people. I don't know many people that do. I don't like showing vulnerability. I don't. I can do it. I can get it. I literally cried in front of this guy. And he was like, oh my goodness. He was like, have you had an MRI? And I was like, no. And I said, think, I'm beginning to think I have something going on with a disc, a bulging disc, a herniated disc. And he said, I think you might be right. He said, so he took me over to the table, and he looked at my back, and that feeling that was wrecking my body that would just like freeze me, I didn't know what it was. It was back spasms.
Uh,
He knew what it was. He was
he
like,
could see it.
yeah, he was like, you're having a really bad back spasm. So he had me stretch it out some, and he gave me one of those big Buso balls and had me sit in a
Mm-hmm.
chair and roll out with it and come back. And then he massaged it and hit that massaging it. It felt so good.
Mm-hmm.
And he sent me home. He didn't work with me anymore. I mean, I may have been there like 20 minutes, and he
Mm-hmm.
was just like, so I called Dr. Ketchum's office, and I told him, I said, at this point, I need an MRI. Like, something is going on. I need an MRI. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
told them, I need an
Yeah.
MRI. And so they were like, okay. And they called me back, and they were like, can you go to Birmingham? And Birmingham is like an hour and 15 minutes from my house.
Oh,
And
geez.
yeah. And I was like, but at this point, I was like, I would go to California right now if somebody could just help me.
Right.
And so at this point, the chiropractor had done my evaluation thing, and I had called them, and I'm like, look, I'm not doing this anymore. The chiropractor, y'all need to cancel all my future appointments. Like, it's not working. And later that day, I was sitting eating lunch, and the actual chiropractor called me himself. And he was like, well, I have your x-rays, because they had took new x-rays. And he was like, we were making really good progress. And I was like, and I'm so like, I don't want to upset anybody. You know, I'll kind of go along, get along. And at this point, I was just like, are you kidding me? And so I told him, I was like, it's not working. I'm like, I have been doing nothing but getting worse since I started coming to you. I'm not blaming it on you, but it's not helping. And I'm not getting better. And so I'm done. And I'm like, my next step is getting an MRI. And he was like, you know, okay, well, if we can help you in the future, just call us. And so they set up my MRI in Birmingham. And my husband drove me over there to St. Vincent's, is where Andrew's sports medicine is. And so we get there, and I had to ride in the back of his truck with a pillow between my knees laying on my side, because that was the only way I could be comfortable. I couldn't sit down. Sitting down at this point was not an option. I had been in bed, I forgot to tell you, but at this point I had been in bed for almost 2 weeks. Like, all I could do to get relief was lay on my side with a pillow between my legs.
Oh,
And
and how old's your son?
he's fixing to be 13, but he's 12.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thankfully, it wasn't a toddler, right?
Yes. Oh God. Oh, my heart goes out to women that have to
Yeah.
deal with this with babies.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would have been horrible. I was in bed. I couldn't do anything. It was a miserable existence. I was miserable. I remember when I finally broke down in front of my husband and cried, because, like I was telling you, I don't like to do that. One night I went to get in our bed, and we have like that memory foam mattress, and it gives. And so I sit on the side of it. It was just so, I was like, I couldn't even sleep in our bed anymore. And so I had to go to our spare bedroom. We had a mattress that was really hard. I could lay on it. And anything that was really hard felt good. Anything that had give, were you the same way?
Exact same way. Yeah. I
Yeah.
happened to have a guest bedroom with a firmer mattress, and I moved in there.
Yeah. And then you're so
It was
alone.
nice not to hear my husband snoring, though. I will say that.
Yeah. Yes. I see that. My snores every now and then, and I'm like, take this pillow and just. But yeah, it's a lonely existence too, isn't
It
it? When you
is.
feel like
Yep.
you have excluded yourself, like,
Hmm.
I want anybody to know that, like, you are not a wuss. It is that bad. It is terrible. And like, it is not just you. It is that horrible. Like, I have worked in construction. I have laid pipe. I have drove rock trucks. I have ran scrapers. I've ran ultra marathons. I've done powerlifting. Nothing compared to this. So if you have this injury, and you have gotten over it and you're better, and there's anything you want to do, I don't know why in the world you would not do it. If it's lose 20 pounds is your goal, if it's go run a marathon, a half marathon, whatever it is you want to do, if you made it through this, I promise you, you can do it. You have the push through, trust me.
Amen. Yes.
And so we get to Birmingham, though, getting back to that, and as soon as we pull up in the parking deck, the lady in Andrews calls me, and she says, Miss Thomas, I hate to tell you, our MRI machine is down.
Oh.
And she was like, you can get out and come in, and you can wait. We're trying to call, I think it was Vestavia Hills Imaging over in Birmingham off of 280. She said, we're trying to see if they can get you in. And I'm laying in the back seat of my husband's truck, just like, will this ever stop, you know? And so we get over to Vestavia Hills Imaging because they were able to get me in. Thank the Lord. So I remember when I laid down on the MRI machine going backwards, I was like, ah. And the lady that was doing the thing, she was like, oh my God, honey, you're okay. I'm like, I'm okay. It's just, it's like, it's awful when that pain hits. And so I remember coming out of the MRI though, because again, it was hard and the pain was completely gone. I got up fine from laying there on that hard of the MRI.
My
And
husband and I had a whole routine of him helping me in and out of bed. We would do the log roll, but he would be pushing my knees up for me and like lifting my leg. And that's how I got into the MRI we said to the nurse, like, can we do it? So we had it down
yes,
pat. So he helped me into and out of the
right.
MRI.
Now, when you were getting your MRI, did you pretty much think or know that it was something with a disc, or were you kind of like me? You were just like, I don't know what's going on.
I thought I was the piriformis muscle.
You
As
still
far as
thought
I'm
piriformis
convinced. Yeah,
too?
yeah. Well, it's so weird with the herniated disc. It's coming out of your spine, but it felt like somebody had a hold of my nerve in my glute. So a lot of us, I think, first think we have that piriformis muscle because the pain is in the glute. It doesn't make
Yes,
sense.
it
Yeah.
does.
So
I know. And when people would, like that lady mentioned in my back, I was like, never, And that was the
yeah,
other thing. Like I'd never had trouble with my back, so my mind didn't even go there. Got my MRI, and this was on a Thursday. Well, on Friday, Dr. Ketchum, the non-surgical doctor, he called me. He said the radiologist called him, and he said, you have a large herniated disc. He said, and it's probably going to require surgery. And I said, well, is there any chance, because the surgery word. I said, is there any chance of resting it and it getting better? And he said, probably, I'm going to say no, you're going to need surgery because radiologists don't just call doctors. I said, okay. He said, so Dr. Cordova, who is an ortho spine specialist in Birmingham for Andrews Sports, he said, we're going to try to get you in to see him. I heard from Dr. Cordova's nurse on Monday, and I'm still in the bed. I mean, I don't want to breeze over how miserable it was or how depressing
yeah.
or awful it
Hmm.
was. Because I know so many people, if they're having this issue, they need to know you're not a wuss. It hurts that bad. It is that
Right.
bad. It
Yeah.
sucks. And I was literally eating my food, laying on my side in the bed with the pillow between my knees. And
Hmm.
by Monday, I remember I had laid so much because I would make myself get up and walk around some, and I would literally pray to Jesus before I got up out of the bed to go to the bathroom because I
Hmm.
knew it was going to hurt.
Yeah.
And it was just miserable. And so, just no life. I can remember it almost seemed like I couldn't even see colors anymore, if that makes any sense. Everything was just
Yeah.
black and white, just awful. The Dr. Andrews nurse called me Monday, and she was like, we can see you. This was like the 10th, I think, of September. And she was like, we can see you September the 29th.
For surgery
No,
or just
for
as a consult?
for the
Consult.
consult. And I was
Yeah.
like, no. I'm like, I don't. I said, I'm bedridden. Like,
Yeah.
I need something done. And she was like, maybe you can call Dr. Ketchum's office. And she was very, like, I don't know if she meant to be that way, but she was very cold. And she was like, well, you can call Dr. Ketchum and see if they can give you
Yeah.
something for the pain. And I was just like, okay. So I called Dr. Ketchum's office, and they were like, no, we saw where she did that. We're going to call them back. We're going to get you in. Don't worry. And so that made me feel better. And I saw Dr. Cordova on the 13th of September.
Okay.
And um, when I went in, they were like, we're going to get an x-ray. And I remember telling Leah, I'm like, I've already had a ton of
Two of
x-rays.
them. Yeah.
Yeah. And she was like, well, he just wants to put his own eyes on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, well, I get that. And so they did an X-ray, and then Dr. Cordova's nurse came in, and he started talking to me, and he was asking me like my symptoms, and I'm putting two and two together. I'm like, they don't realize that they have an MRI from Dr. Ketchum's office. So I looked at him and I said, I know what I have. And he kind of goes, what? And I go, I have a herniated disc, L5S1. He goes, oh. I said, Dr. Ketchum's office sent it over to you guys. And so he went back outside the room. He came back in. And he was like, I'm pretty sure that we're looking at surgery here. And so Dr. Cordova came in, and he told me, he was very honest with me. I love Dr. Cordova, so I would recommend him to anybody if you're in this area. Birmingham, Alabama, Dr. Cordova, Andrew Sports at St. Vincent's, fantastic. He is very straightforward. He told me, he said, look, he said, you don't have to have surgery. He said, you could suck it up. He said, I don't recommend it,
Right.
but you could. And he said, you could have epidural blocks. He
Mm-hmm.
said, there's a 50% chance you would get some relief. But the pain that I was in, 50%,
Mm-hmm.
sounded horrible.
Yeah. So you never once tried the cortisone
I
injection?
never tried the epidural block. I was in so much pain. I had went for so long. And like I said, that ultra mindset of push, 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 I had pushed it so far that I was at my breaking point. And I wanted my life back because the pain is terrible. But for me, not being able to do the things that I normally did, I mean, I went from being able to run 31 miles to not being able to walk 10 minutes. That bothered me more, almost, I would say, than the pain, was having your life stripped from you. And, knowing that life is short, and this is actually 5 months of my life that's just been ruined, basically. I tried to enjoy things, but it was always there. It was like waking up in a messed up Groundhog Day.
Yeah.
I mean, every day was the same.
Yeah.
And I remember nights just praying that it would get time for bed so I could just go to sleep.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, you were
Yeah.
probably the same way. It was horrible.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was September the 13th. And I told Dr. Cordova, I said, I'm miserable. I want it to stop. I want the surgery. And
Mm-hmm.
I had never had surgery. I had a C-section with my son, and I had the block, but I had never
Mm-hmm.
been put to sleep. I'd never had anesthesia.
Okay.
When I had my son, and I found out I was going to have a C-section, I was so nervous. I get so nervous about stuff like that. They had to give me something for nausea, and I was literally jackhammering just because I couldn't control my nerves.
Yeah.
And I was in so much pain. This was literally the easiest decision for me. Like, I was like, I want the surgery. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, let's do this. And so they set it up this was on Wednesday. They were going to set it up for Tuesday. And I was even thinking, oh, all this, I got to wait till Tuesday. I got to go through this many more days.
Wow.
And so we were on our way home, and his office calls. We were supposed to do that. What is it you do like before surgery? Kind of like the
All the
paperwork,
pre-admission
the
testing.
pre-admission stuff. And their computers were down, and she was like, "It could be 3 or 4 hours." And I'm like, "I'm not sitting here." She said, "So you can come back in the morning at like around 7 or 8 o'clock and do the paperwork." And I'm like, "That's what we'll do," because I'm told my husband, I said, I can't sit here for 3 or 4 hours.
Right.
Like, I need to go get in the truck and get my pillow and lay down on my side. And so we were on our way home. This whole time I'm praying, my family's praying for me, that, that I will just get out of this pain, that I'll get some answers, that I'll get this done. And so I think it was divine intervention. We're on our way home, and I get a call from Dr. Cordova's nurse, and she was like, Miss Thomas, we just got a cancellation on one of our surgeries. can you be here in the morning at 5 o'clock? And without even talking to my husband about it, I was like, yes, we can
Yes.
be there. Be there. And so that next morning, I mean, I had no time to plan or to think
Oh,
about
wow.
it or anything, but I was just ready to be out of pain. I was
Yeah.
done.
Mm-hmm.
And so that next morning, I went in at 5, and they even had to do that blood test on me, like to make sure that my blood wasn't too thin, because I
Yeah.
had been on anti-inflammatories for months,
Right.
and so thank God that came back. I was fine. I was good for
Okay.
surgery. I remember kissing my husband, after they had shot me up with the anesthesia, and they were
Mm-hmm.
wheeling me back to where I was going to have surgery. And I was not nervous at all. I remember thinking the pain was so bad. I remember thinking, if I wake up and see Jesus, that's just fine with me. Like, anything
Right.
is better than this.
Oh my goodness.
And so, that was that. And then recovering was its own
Its own
little trip.
trials.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I was totally, and this is something else I would tell somebody that's going through this or thinking about surgery, is what I've learned is back injuries are so different for everybody. And you cannot listen to somebody else's story and think that's going to be your story. Because I remember watching this guy who had similar stuff that I had. And I think it was at 8 weeks, he was walking 8 miles. And, I'm at week 6, and I still feel, I feel, I don't want to say horrible, because I felt way better. I could live a little bit. I still had to rest and just sit down, and I couldn't just get up and go, but way better. Surgery was the best decision I ever made. Like, I have my life back now.
Did you wake up pain free, or did you still have nerve pain?
I woke up pain free, and
That's
I was
great.
pain free for 10 days
Yeah.
and came back.
Yeah. 2 weeks.
And, yeah. And that was disappointing,
Yeah.
because um,
Did you
I,
think you'd re-herniate it 2 weeks later?
oh, yeah. Oh, I
Yeah.
was eating. My sister had come over, and she had picked me up lunch, and I sneezed, and I felt that from the glute to the hamstring
Oh,
just
geez.
pull again.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh my God. I was so scared. I was so terrified.
Yeah.
And when I went back for my checkup, I told my doctor, I was like, I sneezed. And I thought he was going to do another MRI, because I
Yeah.
thought I was telling him something. He was like, those nerves still have to heal, and they're still tight.
Yeah.
And so he told me, he said, that doesn't scare me at all. You're fine. I was like,
That's
okay. But my dad had the same surgery when he was 45, and 2 weeks he was better. He went back to work. He drove a coal truck. He was back at work within 2 weeks.
My brother-in-law had surgery on a Friday. He went back to work that Monday. He's a painter. I said, "What are you doing? How can you even move?" He said he had had a herniated disc for ages. And
Yeah,
he
my
said,
dad
"Well,
too.
yeah." He said, "Well, Payne and I are old friends." So he just was able to go back to work. I was in bed for weeks after my surgery.
Yes, I know. And it is like, it's so unfair.
Yeah.
It's like, how do they get off so easy? But you're glad that somebody that it works out that way for them. And there's some people that from their stories I've heard, it is, they're fine from, their pain doesn't come back. And my stepmother-in-law, she had the same surgery, and she had told me, she was like, they just go in, they just cut a little bit off that disc, and you're just fine. And so I had in my mind unrealistic expectations, I guess, that the surgery was going to take away all the pain and all was going to be good, which it did get me back to living. I do not regret my surgery at all. But I did have a hard time with recovery. It wasn't easy. And did you have really bad leg cramps from your nerves healing?
I had muscle spasms in my back, and then I did get leg cramps, but like 3 months later when I was moving around more, but not like immediately after surgery.
Okay. Mine started for anybody listening that, may be experiencing the same thing, mine started, I want to say, at like 4 weeks after surgery, and they were awful. Absolutely awful. Like, I would just be walking, and you know how when you need to go pee and you do your legs like that?
Yeah.
Like,
You cross your legs.
that's the example I can give you. That's literally what my legs would do. They were just like, I'd be walking and I'd just literally like
Ah,
from the leg cramps. And I told my doctor about it, and he said, that happens to some people
yeah.
with the healing nerves. Nerves are weird.
Yeah.
They do weird things.
What are you, 9 months later now? Are you 9 months post-surgery?
Yep. And I really started feeling much, much better at 6 months.
Yep.
Then
That's how long it took me.
is it really? And
Yeah.
I could sit down longer. Did you
Uh-huh.
notice that? Like, I don't know if you had
I
trouble with sitting, but it was horrible for me.
Yeah. I just remember being at work and turning to my boss and saying, "I finally feel like myself again. Like I can do the job well." It was
Right.
I had a job where I was on my feet most of the time, like bent over. Um,
Hmm.
so and he said, "Yeah, well, surgery, that's what a lot of people say." 6 months.
Yeah. And it's like you just have to be patient. It just takes patience and be realistic and know that your injury is not like anybody else's injury. It's your injury. And if it takes 9 months, if it takes a year, if it takes a year and a half, if it takes 2 years,
Yeah.
I hope it
Now,
don't. But
have you tried running again?
I have. I tried, the last time I ran was the first part of May,
Okay.
and every time that I run, it seems to flare up. So
Okay.
my plan is to walk for the rest of the summer because I'm a wuss and I don't like to go into the woods. I like trail running. I don't like to go into
Okay.
the woods until the fall when the ticks and the snakes have decided to wait.
It's good reasons. Good reasons.
So I want to get back into the trail this fall, and I still want to run a 50 miler. That's the next thing, and I'm going to run it. I don't know how long it's going to take me, but I'm going to run it, and then I'm going to send my surgeon a picture of me, whatever medal I get for doing it, and telling you a huge thank you. Um, because he also put me on gabapentin for nerve pain during my recovery too. If anybody wants to know that, that was the gabapentin helped tolerate some of that first nerve pain, and I don't like to take medicine, and so I didn't do a refill of that. I just took it long enough till it kind of settled down, and then I haven't had to take anything for pain since March, as far as like even a Tylenol or anything like that. Because, like I said, now it's just discomfort. It's not pain, it's just discomfort.
Are you doing anything as far as strengthening your back muscles and your supporting muscles?
Yes, that was another thing I was going to bring up. I used for my PT. I didn't go back to PT because stretching seemed to irritate me while my nerves were feeling, and so I had to be very careful about when I stretched. And stretching started feeling really good at that 6 month point. So stretching my hamstrings felt better, and I used Back Doctor for anybody that maybe doesn't have insurance that can't do PT. There's an app called Back Doctor, and his name is Watkins, Dr. Watkins, and he has a step-by-step videos on how to do the exercises to strengthen your core. Like, and you can choose the exercises you want to do. I did dead bugs, and I did dead bugs before, and I didn't do them correctly, and I always was just kind of flailing, and I thought,
Yeah.
this thing, I'll never feel these. But watching his video and actually doing them correctly, if you
Yeah.
do them correctly, they work.
Yeah.
And I did the dead bugs. I did the partial sit-ups because I could do the partial sit-ups without pain. I know some people say that causes them pain. So he's got other stuff on there if you can't do that. And then bird dogs. Dogs are my friend. They really help. I do suitcase carries with a weight now. Yeah, I've got up to using 20 pounds, and I'll just do those suitcase carries for bracing the core. And I really like those. And then there is a guy on YouTube called Matt Winning. He has a video on strengthening your core. I used his core strengthening routine, which was just planks, and then side planks, farmer's carries, and then he shows you how to use a band to work your hamstrings.
Mm-hmm.
Stu McGill, I've done some of his stuff, his program. So I like to do my core 3 times a week now, and I'll kind of those different routines throughout the week were some of my favorites. And then, my bodybuilding workouts to build your strength, a lot of glute bridges, because like I said, I feel like I got a weakness in my hips, and probably a lot of people do, from all the sitting that we have to do in the work world.
I really felt it in my hips afterwards, after surgery. And I put myself back into physical therapy like a year later, just because would go on long walks and then both my hips would start to hurt. And so just to re-strengthen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very important. So all that stuff I'm definitely going to keep doing and take serious. And like when I do get running, I'm not going to quit because it's important. I didn't realize how important it was until that disc herniated. And it's like, you don't want it to happen again. So I don't want to quit, and it's easy to talk yourself out of it. It's like, I did that today. So sick of doing that.
How did you get over the emotional trauma of the herniated disc?
I still have to work on it. I mean, even with these flare-ups, I know they're just flare-ups and it's just discomfort, but my mind will go, oh gosh, you've protruding, it's protruding, or you've herniated, or, this ain't right. And it's like, no, I know the difference.
I think it took me a full year to get over
Yeah.
emotionally. I would cry when I would get a little flare, thinking of re-herniated, and almost like PTSD. Yeah, that's all we think about.
It's like PTSD, and like the movements, the different movements that hurt you. Like for me, it was putting my pants on. Like every time I put my pants on, it's like I'm almost braced to feel that pain. Or like if I go to close my door, reaching to close my door, because I used to get so mad at myself. I'd get in the car and I'd forget to go ahead and pull my door to me, and so then I reach out, and that caused pain. And yeah, you're so right. It is like PTSD.
Yeah.
It's still movements that bothered me. When I do them, I think about it.
Right. Well, I'm so glad to hear that you are doing better and that you have a great mindset of, yes, I will be running again. And I think that's the perfect mindset to have with this kind of injury. And I'd love to see your run when you do it again. So include me on that email.
I will.
I just want to thank you so much for being willing to share your story with me.
Yes, thank you. And I appreciate all your videos. And like I said, even if it did embarrass you, your fashion video is hilarious. It brought a smile to my face when I was at home feeling sorry for myself after my surgery.
That was the result of cabin fever.
Yes, it's a real thing. Trust me. When my husband would go to work and my son was going to school, it was like, oh, I'm just by myself. It's so miserable.
Oh, well, I'm glad you found it, and I'm glad it brought a smile to your face in this rough time.
Yes.
And if you are a listener who has a positive story of recovery from a serious back or neck injury, head over to my website, bedbackbeyond.com, and click Share Your Story. I would love to include your voice on the show. Loretta, once again, thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.